So I'm wondering, like, how does this guy get here? Like, maybe he came on a boat or something, because there is, like, water in the back. And so I walk around to the back, and I see the back door completely shattered.
We're diving into the world of online fame today, but not like, in the usual way.
Right.
Not celebrating, like follower counts or any viral trends.
Yeah.
Instead, we're going to be taking a hard look at kind of the dark side.
Yeah.
Exploring a recent incident with OnlyFans model, Sophie Rain.
Yeah, it's a case that forces us to confront some unsettling questions, I think, about parasocial relationships and the blurring of lines between fantasy and reality,
right,
and the responsibilities that platforms have in protecting their creators.
Yeah, and I think, it's interesting because on the surface, Sophie Rain seems to have it all, right?
Right.
Millions of followers, multi-million-dollar income.
The name is Sophie Rain. She's made an astonishing $43 million in earnings over the past year.
But behind that facade, there's this vulnerability that this incident really exposed.
Yeah.
And frankly, it's pretty terrifying.
What's particularly disturbing is that this wasn't just like a random act of violence, right? It was targeted.
Yeah.
Driven by a distorted sense of intimacy and ownership that can develop in these parasocial relationships.
And just to be clear for our listener, we're talking about the incident in Fort Lauderdale on February 10th.
Right.
When Sophie and her friends returned to their rented mansion after the Super Bowl.
Yes.
And they found a broken window, alarms blaring, and a man inside.
Yeah.
Claiming to be the new owner.
This man, 22-year-old Connor James Litka, was later found to have a bag containing clothes, cameras, and even children's action figures.
Wow.
It paints a very chilly picture of someone who had kind of constructed a fantasy world in his mind, blurring the lines between his online obsession with Sophie and the reality of her life.
Yeah, it's like something out of a psychological thriller, really.
It is.
But before we get into all the details of that incident, I think it's important to understand that there were warning signs.
Okay.
A previous encounter that kind of foreshadowed this terrifying escalation.
You're referring to the incident in January at Sophie's Miami home?
Exactly.
Right.
Another man, also named Connor, showed up claiming to know Sophie and expressing interest in buying the house.
It's really just scary because the whole time he planned it. He planned this essentially, and it's in the proof. Like, he sent the DMs. Anyways,
did he DM you saying I'm gonna show up? Like, I want to see you. Like, I'm gonna pull up.
Basically, he was like insinuating it.
Yeah.
The belief that he has a right to be there,
right,
to know her, even though there's no evidence of any real life connection.
And that's a question that investigators are likely exploring, right?
Yeah.
Especially considering that Litka, the intruder from the Fort Lauderdale incident,
right,
he has a history of criminal behavior.
He does.
Sir, you're charged with 1 count burglary, unoccupied dwelling, unarmed. You're also charged with resisting an officer obstruction without violence and false identification given to a law enforcement officer.
Your Honor, I would advise the court, he was just arrested a month ago in the state of Texas, where according to the report, he resides in Houston, for criminal trespass. He has pending charges right now out of Kentucky, from what I can tell, Your Honor, Kentucky. February of 24, criminal trespass, disorderly conduct. State of Indiana from January 24, reckless driving. But also, Your Honor, I just want the court to be aware, I did a Google search on Mr. Litka this morning, and it would appear he gained some notoriety in the state of Kentucky last year, where he allegedly went to a Porsche dealership in February of last year and attempted to buy a Porsche with a fake $78 million check. It's reported that the day prior, he went to another dealership and attempted to buy a Land Rover with a $12 million check.
Charges for criminal trespass, disorderly conduct, even attempting to buy luxury cars with fraudulent checks.
Wow.
Yeah. So
this suggests a pattern of instability and disregard for boundaries.
Yeah.
Which is particularly concerning given his fixation on Sophie Rain.
It takes us right back to the heart of this issue.
Yes.
Parasocial relationships and the unique dangers that they pose for individuals in the public eye.
Absolutely.
Especially, those like Sophie, who build their careers on platforms like OnlyFans.
Right. Platforms where intimacy and access are literally part of the business model.
Yeah.
You're selling not just content, but a sense of connection.
Right.
A personalized experience that can blur the lines between performer and fan.
And incredibly lucrative. But that success, I think, also makes them targets.
Yeah.
For individuals who might struggle with boundaries or have a propensity for obsessive behavior.
Absolutely. It's a double-edged sword, right?
Yeah.
The very elements that make these platforms successful,
Right.
the curated intimacy, the personalized attention, also create vulnerabilities
Right.
that can be exploited by individuals with malicious intent.
So how do we reconcile this?
Right.
How do we protect creators without undermining the aspects of these platforms
Yeah.
that make them so appealing to both creators and fans?
It's a complex issue without easy answers.
Right.
But one thing is clear.
Yeah.
Platforms like OnlyFans have a responsibility to acknowledge these dangers
Right.
and implement safeguards to protect their creators.
Things like robust verification processes,
Absolutely.
educational resources on the dangers of parasocial relationships, even perhaps algorithms that can flag potentially harmful interactions or accounts.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about taking proactive steps to prevent these situations from escalating rather than simply reacting after an incident has occurred.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
It's tragic that it often takes a high-profile case like Sophie Rain's to bring these issues to light, you know?
Right.
But what's even more concerning is that these dynamics of online obsession and blurred boundaries
Yeah.
are likely to become even more prevalent as we move into the era of the metaverse.
The metaverse.
Yeah.
It's been getting a lot of buzz lately, but to be honest, I'm still a little bit confused by it.
Sure.
Can you break it down for me and our listener? Like, why is this relevant to this conversation about online safety?
Absolutely. So, at its core, the metaverse is about creating immersive digital environments where people can interact with each other,
Okay.
participate in experiences, and even own virtual assets.
Okay.
Think of it as like a 3D internet where your presence is represented by an avatar.
Okay, I'm starting to get the picture.
Yeah.
But how does this connect to the dangers we've been discussing with Sophie Rain's case?
Well, imagine a scenario where someone like Connor Litka,
Okay.
who's fixated on an influencer,
Right.
can now not just view their content, but virtually enter their space.
Oh, wow.
Attend events with them, interact with their avatar in ways that feel incredibly real.
Okay, so that's a bit unsettling.
It is.
It's like taking parasocial relationships to a whole new level of intensity.
Yes.
Where the lines between fantasy and reality become even more blurred.
Exactly. And this raises a whole host of new challenges for online safety.
Right.
How do we prevent harassment and stalking in a virtual world?
Yeah.
What are the legal ramifications of virtual assault or intrusion?
Wow.
How do we protect user privacy when our digital footprints become even more detailed and immersive?
It's a lot to consider. It almost feels like we're building this incredible new digital world.
Yeah.
Without fully understanding the potential consequences.
It's a valid concern that technology is evolving at such a rapid pace.
Right.
That it's hard for regulations and social norms to keep up.
Yeah.
And that's why it's crucial to have these conversations now.
Right.
To anticipate potential dangers and start thinking about solutions.
So what can we do? Is there any way to mitigate these risks without stifling the potential of the metaverse?
I think it's going to require a multifaceted approach.
Okay.
For starters, platforms need to prioritize user safety from the ground up.
Okay.
That means building in robust moderation tools, clear reporting mechanisms,
Yeah.
and consequences for those who violate community guidelines.
It's like creating a virtual neighborhood with effective security systems.
Yes.
And a clear code of conduct.
Exactly.
But what about the issue of blurring boundaries? How do we prevent people from taking their online obsessions into the metaverse?
That's where education and awareness come in.
Okay.
We need to be teaching people, especially young people, about healthy online interactions, the dangers of parasocial relationships, and the importance of respecting boundaries, even in virtual spaces.
So it's not just about technical solutions, it's about fostering a culture of responsible digital citizenship.
Absolutely. And it's about demanding accountability from the companies that are building these platforms.
Right.
They have a responsibility to ensure that the metaverse is a safe and inclusive space for everyone.
Right.
That means investing in research, listening to user feedback, and working with experts to develop ethical guidelines and safety protocols.
It sounds like we need a combination of individual responsibility, platform accountability, and a broader societal shift in how we think about online interaction.
Precisely. It's a collective effort, and it starts with recognizing that our actions both online and offline have real-world consequences.
This entire conversation really makes you think about the nature of fame in the digital age.
Yeah.
It's not just about talent or charisma anymore. It's about navigating this complex web of parasocial relationships, online safety.
Yeah.
And the blurring lines between the digital and the real.
You've hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
And it's not just celebrities or influencers who are affected.
Right.
As the metaverse becomes more integrated into our lives, these issues will impact all of us in some way.
Right.
It's crucial that we start thinking critically about our digital identities, our online interactions,
Yeah.
and the kind of digital world we want to create.
Okay, so we've covered some pretty heavy ground in this deep dive. You
Yeah.
know, from Sophie Rain's experience to like all these potential dangers lurking in the metaverse.
Yeah.
You've given our listener a lot to consider. But before we wrap up, I'd love to maybe shift gears a little bit.
Sure.
And talk about solutions. Like, what can we as individuals actually do to kind of navigate this digital world more safely
Yeah.
and responsible?
I think it's easy to feel overwhelmed by all of this.
Yeah.
But I think the key is to focus on what's within our control, right? Like,
Okay.
we might not be able to struggle-handedly fix the internet, but we can certainly make choices
Right.
that protect ourselves and those around us.
Okay, that makes sense. So where do we start?
Right.
What are some concrete steps our listener can take today to improve their digital safety and awareness?
Well, first and foremost, I think we need to be more mindful of our own online behavior.
Right.
You know, it's easy to forget that our actions have consequences,
Yeah.
even in the digital reign, right?
Right.
So think before you post, consider the potential impact of your words.
Yeah.
And treat others with the same respect you'd expect in person.
It sounds simple, but it's something we could all probably stand to be reminded of.
Absolutely. And it's not just about being kind, it's also about being cautious, right?
Right.
Be mindful of the information you share online.
Yeah.
Especially personal details like your location, home address,
Right.
or travel plans. Even seemingly insignificant bits of information can be pieced together by someone with bad intentions.
Right. It's like leaving a trail of digital breadcrumbs that could lead someone right to your doorstep.
Well said. Thanks for having me on the show today.
Oh, of course. Thank you for your expertise.
It's been a pleasure diving into this complex and important topic with you.
And to our listener, thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
Yes, thank you.
We hope you found it informative, thought-provoking,
Yeah,
and ultimately empowering.
absolutely.
We'll see you next time for another exploration of the ever-evolving world of digital culture.